I would love to give you some great advice, but it'll come at a great cost. Occasionally, I get to ride you like a horse.
Thanks for this idea, Uncle Ibis. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Disenchantment, or more specifically, the character Luci, and the massive cliffhanger that they dropped on him at the end of Season 3. In Part 3, Dagmar ends up returning. Apparently, Dagmar has been working behind the scenes to try and get Bean to accept her fate, even if, honestly, it only seemed like the one thing she did was run that puppet shop. And we still don't know what this prophecy is. But because Dagmar returns, Luci ends up getting killed, and he ends up in heaven.
Hell no!
Hell yes.
I've been asked what I think about this happening and what my opinion is. And well, you might hate me for saying this, but I found Lucy's death to be really anticlimactic. Especially compared to Alpho's death, which caught me way off guard the first time I watched it. I'll explain why, but first, let me get my thoughts on Luci himself. In Disenchantment, Lucy is Bean's personal demon. As part of Cloyd and Becky's plot to do something with Bean, are they even still alive? I don't know. They summoned Lucy, and they gave him to Bean as a wedding present.
Guards! Guards! A weird ghost guy is attacking and complimenting me!
But as Bean's personal demon, Lucy's purpose is to make her miserable, encourage her to make bad choices, and ultimately turn her to the dark side.
Yeah, look, you're stuck with me forever, so just take a deep breath and...
Keep this in mind going forward. Now, on paper, this is a good idea, and it makes him a good foil to Alpho. And it could start a conversation or change Bean's character for the worse or for the better. I'm sure you're probably thinking some stuff is going to go down with Lucy, or that you have plenty of questions to ask about him. But beyond maybe one episode, that doesn't really happen. Instead of, say, him encouraging Bean to make decisions that help her, but are ultimately ruinous, or vice versa, he just becomes her drinking buddy, for lack of a better word. Or instead of us finding out how he's connected to Maru, they just have him get put in a bottle by Dagmar. Seriously, a lot of times, but obviously not all the time, he doesn't contribute much to the plot beyond being the comic relief.
You're magic, right?
Yep. Not that kind of magic, though.
And I think a reason for that is because why does Bean need somebody to corrupt her? Yeah, maybe Cloyd and Becky think she's a pure little maiden, but he doesn't need to corrupt Bean that much, really.
Stealing from my stepmother's purse. Is that who I really am?
It's exactly who you are. You're also the type to steal enough for your friends.
The start of the show, when they first meet, Bean is basically Lucy if he was a human woman. Or rather, Lucy if he actually cared about people. She drinks, and she parties, and she wants freedom. And even when Lucy tries to tempt Bean to do bad stuff, most of the time, he doesn't really do that much. It's not that big of a struggle.
You could use some, though.
I really shouldn't.
Times when you really shouldn't are exactly when you really should.
Sometimes all he has to do to get this rebellious princess to listen to him is to tell her to do it.
Nope, she has no friends. She has nothing in her life except a drug that makes her happy. Now let's go steal it.
It's not a struggle of bad and good or evil. It's just him hanging around making quips and that's it. Obviously, yeah, the quips are funny, but that's all Lucy's there for.
It's just too painful seeing the truth all the time.
Ah, that's why humans tend to avoid it.
But don't get me wrong, I don't hate Lucy. It's kind of like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. I think Lucy is good on paper, but he's on the wrong show. And I think a reason for that is because of what kind of character Bean is. Like I said, she's basically Lucy as a human woman. I think if Bean was a different kind of character, Lucy's original purpose could have worked. Since he and Bean are similar, it feels like the writers don't know what to do with him most of the time, beyond having him make jokes. Because let's be honest, it'd be a bit more interesting instead of being a drunk, Bean was a plucky, saccharine Disney princess. Think Anna, or Ariel, or Belle, or any of those types. She'd be pure, but she still longed for freedom and a destiny of her own. Wouldn't it be more interesting if she was like that, and then Lucy corrupted her?
You are hereby cursed from the deepest depths of the underworld!
Oh, what?
Ah, you look great, though.
Or if you want another comparison, what if Bean was more like Clara? Or a pure Disney princess who has a lot of hidden demons. And then Lucy corrupted her.
Is that one of your jive words, like emancipation?
So that by the end of the first season, Bean's a totally different character. Or what if, say, Bean's goodness somehow rubs off on Lucy and their roles reverse? Instead of him corrupting Bean, she's corrupting him. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Lucy in the guilty pleasure sense, and as I keep saying, I think he's funny. I just find him to be a wasted opportunity. Honestly, episode 7 of season 3 is probably my favorite of the whole show. Not only is it a great punchline to a hilarious joke,
Bean!
but Lucy and the army are equally funny.
You're the most pathetic scum I have ever had the misfortune of laying eyes on, and I spend most of my days staring at Elfo.
Hi, I'm Corporal Alpho.
But despite this, I kind of seeing him doing next to nothing most of the time beyond make jokes, especially in season 3. We get little character development from him, little depth, etc. He's shallow.
Oh no, you did not just call me shallow, did you?
If you mean, do I think I could stand in a puddle full of you and not get my feet wet? Then yeah.
A few reviewers have already said it, but I guess because they don't know what to do with him, Luci seems like an attempt to replicate Bender, which they're doing twice if Zog's any indication.
Fight my shiny metal axe!
And if they're trying to do that with Luci, it doesn't work. Yeah, like Bender, Luci's a foul-mouthed non-human who likes to use bad substances, and he's a comic relief who hangs around the main character.
Do a flip!
But there's a difference. With Bender, we got to look into his head. We knew he was a jerk with a heart of gold who had a weird way of expressing it, and a lot of episodes focus on his conscience or him doing bad deeds and regretting them. And we knew he cared about his friends, and we weren't told or given some big reveal that he did.
Fry, you're my friend.
He got his own moments or his own episodes that let him shine through. Like in the episode where Bender wants Fry to move in with him, and he goes as far as to try and cut off his
Little Bender!
so they can live together. Or he can't cope with the sadness and the stress of it all, so he goes sober.
I want you to look me in the eye and promise you won't get behind the wheel without some kind of alcoholic beverage in your hand.
I promise nothing!
Even if him and Fry are polar opposites, they do complement each other. As Fry encourages Bender to have a moral compass, and Bender encourages Fry to make decisions that might seem bad, but ultimately help him.
Doesn't seem entirely moral to...
Fry, if you don't take this offer right now, I will lose all respect for you and punch you.
Luci, he's basically a flanderized version of Bender. He's basically Bender if he never got any of these moments, or we rather told about these moments. Like, what if instead of seeing Bender agonize over cutting off his
Little Bender!
we were told he was agonizing? Yeah, they might make it funny, but 90% of the time there'd be no depth to him as a character. There'd be nothing to relate to him about, just he's a funny dude.
Please, Bender, have some malt liquor. If not for yourself, then for the people who love you.
I hate the people who love me, and they hate me.
And it's just super unfortunate if the show is trying to redeem Luci or improve him, especially since we never get any episodes where he's the main focus. Or not that many compared to Alpha or Bean. Except maybe beyond the episode Asmodeus, and maybe the Exorcism episode. Whenever it seems like he gets some kind of development, they always squander it. Seriously, it's like this.
Beyond your reach!
Actually, the Hell episode is what they should have given Luci from the start, and let's explain why. It's interesting, and yeah, it shows how much Luci cares for Bean, and Elfo. With the Exorcism episode, you can easily make the point he's only helping because Bean's this girl he has to watch. And either way, Big Joe is gonna exorcise him. This isn't me just looking too deep, he even says it.
I saved your life, now I can go back to ruining it.
But this episode, Luci has to give up his
Your powers, your immortality, your parking space, everything!
That's a price I'm willing to pay.
It honestly sells that he cares for the both of them. Still, I think one way they could have improved Luci was by making that episode his backstory. Or they should have elaborated more on it beyond a few mentions.
And where are your wings?
I'm still just a sub-demon, ma'am. I haven't earned my wings yet.
What if Luci was an outcast in hell the same way Alpha was in Elfwood? It'd be kind of ironic, right? Maybe it wasn't because he was too nice or too bad, but just because, I don't know, he was scrawny or he never did a good job. And maybe that's how Cloyd and Becky got him to watch over Bean. It would work because it would explain how he's connected to Maru more clearly. Seriously, they never explained how he's connected. Just, they gave him to Bean, but does he even know who they are? Seriously, did they just buy him in a CVS? And it would also make him more of a foil to Elfo, and a clearer one at that. I know I always make the point about foils, but foils are important to a story. While Elfo leaves Elfwood but still finds the good in everything, Luci's been through hell and back, and he would think there'd be no good thing in the world. But the pair could be there to show him that, hey, there could be good in the world, but you have to make it. It would make him going to heaven make more sense, since he changed as a person, and he proved that development. But back on the topic of his death, let me offer you this. Compare Luci to Elfo, another close friend of Bean who gets killed near the end of a season. Yeah, Elfo is super annoying and super inconsistent, but the writers try to give us development or episodes that focus on him, especially in season 1. Yeah, maybe it's a little emphasis on tries a lot of the time, but in their defense, they at least give him a moment of weakness.
Also have...
Maybe it's not Steven having a mental breakdown, but it's something. Because of that, it's more of a gut punch when he gets hit by an arrow and Bean has to decide who to save. And because they have this bond, you're ultimately both disappointed in Bean for what she did and proud of her. was even after I realized Alpha would probably get brought back. Now, when you kill a character off, it's usually to further the growth of another character or add something to the plot. Alpha's death did both. It got Bean to be placed in a moment it's out, and it made her revive Dagmar instead of Elfo, which kickstarts the conflict for the next season.
Don't you get it, Elfo? Picking her over you was the worst mistake I've ever made.
I guess you can argue the purpose of Lucy's death is to further Bean's character, especially since she's all alone and might get forced into another marriage. But if the purpose is to further Bean's character or put her in a dark place, it doesn't really work. This season at least, the pair did pretty much nothing together. They are separate a lot of the time. Yeah, even if Alpha got kidnapped by ogres, you know they're gonna bring it back, but it still works. He and Bean spent a lot of time together this season. Even if, yeah, he was still really annoying this season. Zog getting put away worked. We got a lot of bonding between him and Bean that made it work.
Thanks for being my dad, okay? I've had a lot of people leave me in my life, but I've never, ever not had you before.
And the writers gave Zog moments of weakness. If Lucy got killed last season, yeah, it might have felt like a repeat of season 1, but it would have had more of an impact. That time around, he at least had development, and we found out he cared for Bean and Elfo. If they wanted to give his demise more of an impact, season 3 would have been the perfect time to give Lucy an episode dedicated to him, or some kind of development we haven't seen yet, especially with Bean. Like I said, they're separated for most of the season. They do try with him and Zog, but that's not enough to justify having to kill him off, for what's likely going to mount to another cliffhanger cop-out. And even then, he doesn't get vulnerable or personal with Zog anyways, he just puts him to bed. I didn't feel any kind of emotion for that compared to Bean crying into her dad's arms. Him putting Zog to bed was pretty much all he did this season beyond sorta help Bean where they're in Trog territory. But again, that's not enough to justify him dying. Whoa, wait, I forgot. He was in the army. Again, it was super funny, but not enough to justify killing him off. And not helping is how he dies. Well, yeah, we all knew that Alpha was gonna come back. His death at least felt more natural, I guess you could say. Lucy, it feels really forced and interrupt, like the writers dropped a refrigerator on him. But seriously, watch it right here.
I don't know why you always bring out the good half of me, Bean.
If it was something like he sacrificed himself for Dreamland, or he did it for Zog, or Asmodeus came to wreak his revenge, I could see it as a bit more dignified or poignant, because it would be in character, and it would feel a little more natural. But again, how he died is really sudden. And what's also sudden is, why did he end up in heaven? What good thing did he really do to justify that? Although, while inconsistent, you can make the argument as to why, since he was technically good on Earth. But Lucy?
Well, at least we saved Lucy.
But we released evil upon the world.
A happy ending for everyone.
Was it because Bender almost ended up in robot heaven, so he did it with Lucy? Was it because he stood up to his boss? Yeah, if it was something like God said that at the end of the season, I could see that working, but really? He barely changes a character to justify that, beyond standing up to his boss. He doesn't really deserve it. If you're telling me Lucy is good now, perfectly good, and he deserves his fate,
then I am terribly overweight. For my height.
But like I said with Elfo's death, a reason why I dislike Lucy's death is because you know they're gonna bring it back. Let's be honest, there's no way they get rid of Lucy. He's essentially the show's Stewie Griffin. But can we just discuss something? Disenchantment, it feels like it has a nasty habit of resurrecting characters. Or making you think they're gonna get killed and then plot armor.
But I'm done with your memorials, your wakes, or flying to your home planets to scatter your fucking ashes! I am done!
But like Batman, that's kind of how I feel about this cliffhanger this season. Dagmar coming back, yeah, we were kind of expecting it, but the direction of the last scene was executed perfectly. Even if Dagmar had a lot of issues in Season 2 that I talked about in my last video, I still think the last scene in the season is probably my favorite of the whole show.
What? No hug?
This season, they kind of replicated, but tell me, how does Dagmar, somebody versed in magic, know what an elevator is despite being in stone for 20 years? Or how does a wedding somehow involve the prophecy if the prophecy was Bean getting a crown drilled into her skull? This season, Dagmar wasn't really all that built up, except for the puppet store. That was really good. Seriously, this cliffhanger doesn't have the same impact that Season 2 did. It feels anticlimactic. But back to the original question, how do I think Lucy coming back to life is gonna work? As bad as it sounds, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a repeat of what happened this season, and the season before. Like Bean somehow escapes Dagmar by episode 3, and then Lucy gets back by episode 4, and then Elfo's free the very next episode, and then we get filler or some kind of plot, and then something goes down, and then Dagmar cliffhanger at the end, I do think it's gonna be something like he squanders his chance in heaven, or he tries to by doing something naughty, and then he ends up in hell, and that's how he and Bean meet. But I think his death will be resolved fairly quickly. Yeah, it seems really cynical, but why do I think this way? Because old habits die hard. And if Disenchantment wants to break this habit, I propose this. Don't bring Lucy back until at least the middle of the season, or the end of the season. I only say this because part 2 had a major problem for the story, and that was status quo. I feel like they cut off a lot of good plot points too early, or they rush through them before they can become interesting. I have said it a lot of times, but at times it feels like the show feels confused. It doesn't know if it wants to be like Futurama, where there is a plot, but you don't have to know who, say, Mom is if you want to watch The Devil's Hands or Idle Playthings, or if it wants to be a story-driven show like Steven Universe. Instead of Una developing self-respect and becoming a pirate queen over the course of a couple episodes, it takes one episode, even if I do like the direction they take her character. Instead of Bean slowly realizing there's a prophecy or something about her mother, one episode, and we don't even know what the prophecy is.
There's a prophecy to be fulfilled, our fame and fortune to be restored, a debt to hell that we're really overdue on.
Seriously, at times, this is what Season 2 felt like. Alpha, all this build-up to the fact he's dead, and he's brought back by episode 3. Kinda like Brian Griffin. But unlike Brian, yeah, it is a struggle, but it's not a big struggle, honestly. And while he and Bean fight about what happens, that's about it. And what's worse is, Alpha's death doesn't really change him in any meaningful sense. He's just the same inconsistent jerk that he always is. Obviously, don't give him a joke license like they did Brian, but what is different about Alpha in episode 5 compared to episode 25? When Lucy comes back, change him up. Maybe don't make him super out of character, but change him up a bit or have him work on a flaw. Or give us an episode about him. Or put him in a dark place. Season 3 has problems, but it's done a lot of good in fixing others. Bean is more stable and likable as a character. The episodes are more plot-driven. I'm sure you can fix this, or you can at least fix Lucy. But what do you think is going to happen to Lucy next season? Do you think he'll stay dead, or will he come back early? What other topics should I touch on? And what else should I review? So don't forget to follow me on Instagram, and think about becoming a patron. A little help goes a long way. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm Kitty Monk, and thank you for watching.